the nature of your emergency?
Welcome back to the Tactical Living Podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Wilton, joined by Sergeant Wilton. Glenn, how are you?
I'm really good.
You know, it's a really cool thing anytime that I see somebody who has interest in becoming a police officer and the whole journey of interviewing, background checks, like all the things, and then starting the academy. And then even going through the academy and that pinning ceremony. And there's so much that is really admirable about that. But one thing that I never see is anybody talking about the hidden cost of wearing a badge.
Yeah, I think we never, even in the academy, like you're never prepared for everything that you're going to experience, everything that you're going to witness, to see, to be present for, not only in your work life but also in your personal life. Like you hit a lot of roadblocks, you hit a lot of problems that you never even thought were a thing.
Yeah, and you know, the badge gives purpose, surely. It gives pride, it gives identity, it gives brotherhood, but I feel like it also quietly takes things in return, like your energy, emotional availability, your relationships, health, and sometimes for a lot of people, even their sense of self. Yeah,
I think, and that's where, like, and we've talked about this before, is you start identifying only as that police officer because it garners that attention from family, friends, whoever it may be, of this is who you are now, and they start identifying you as a police officer only, instead of, oh yeah, this is my son or my daughter who has done this in their life.
Yeah, there's a psychological concept. It's called cumulative identity erosion. And I don't think this is about blaming the job. I think that it's more about telling the truth as to what service actually costs, so that you can actually protect it and then navigate ways to be able to do that, because things are going to ebb and flow and shift immensely throughout your career.
Yeah, and it's crazy to really think about, like, from when I first started to where I'm at today, of how many dynamics have shifted, how many my perception of things has changed so much. And I remember when I was a new cop, I wanted to go into narcs. I wanted to do all these other adventures and to do that, and where my career didn't pan out that way. But you adapt and you adjust to figuring out what you want your career to be.
Yeah, and a lot of that has come with personal experience and growth too. And you know, we are I was about to say we're very fortunate, but we're not. We've worked with intention to develop the marriage, the relationship, the home, the family that we have. And a lot of the times I see this, like the scales are really overbalanced when it comes to people that don't have that in their home life.
Yeah, and I think with, you have your professional goals, you have your goals, what you want to do at work, and you don't establish those goals at home with your spouse, with your kids, with your family, and you're in this together. It's a family thing, to where you want to have that not only safe space when you go home, but to be able to shift your mindset of things don't always have to be if this doesn't happen, then I'm disgruntled, and it turns into this whole different dynamic. It's, you want to be there to be able to ebb and flow as time goes along.
So cumulative identity erosion actually happens when your role slowly starts to consume other parts of who you are. And I think that a lot of the times this happens without you even realizing that it's happening. And for first responders, it could be that the badge is becoming your primary identity. We see that all of the time. Your emotional suppression actually becomes the default because that's what you're used to at work. And your personal needs become deprioritized because you're used to putting other people first when you are on the job.
Yeah, and I think when you're only identifying as that, and I think it has a lot to do with actually having conversations not only with yourself, but with your family, because I was just thinking about this, is like, when's the last time like we went and saw my parents and they're going, oh yeah, Clint's a cop. Clint's a cop, and going out and pushing that out to everybody, because when everyone's pointing that finger that this is who you are and you don't define who you are outside of that, you're going to feel that's your identity.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because people are going to pick up on what you're giving to them. So if your whole conversation around them and everything that you talk about and who you are is just being a cop, instead of like, oh yeah, we were at home playing with the horse and like whatever the things are, playing with the kids. And, that's who other people are only going to know to identify you as. And I think too that relationships often take a backseat to what you do for work, and your self-worth is tied to your performance. And that's a big, big mistake.
Yeah, because there's so much, especially when you could feel that you're performing at your highest level and you're doing anything and everything that you think your bosses want, and then you get your yearly eval and they come in and like, oh yeah, you're subpar. And that could be detrimental to not only your self-confidence, but instead of that, having that extreme ownership and saying, okay, well, this is what I thought. What am I doing wrong? How can I change that?
Yeah, and for a lot of people, it's not that over time the cost is just one big breaking point. Unless you get fired or you get injured on the job, maybe, then that could happen. But I think that for most people, it's this slow erosion that just shows up over years and it turns into just burnout.
Yeah, and that's why it's so important to be able to create those barriers between your professional and your personal life, to where you're not always pouring out to complete strangers all the time, to when you come home, your cup's absolutely empty and you can't even pour out to your own family.
I think that some of the ways that this happens is emotional availability that actually shrinks. So you could protect yourself at work by shutting down, but then you might forget how to turn it back on at home.
Yeah, I think we put up these roadblocks, these barriers for ourselves on a regular basis because we see the worst of the worst. And it's hard to get to the point of where you know when to turn it on and turn it off. And it takes intentional practice to be able to get to that point of where you turn it off at work, but then you turn it back on at home.
Something else that I think is very incorrect is any time that I hear somebody say something along the lines of like, well, this is what you signed up for. And for a lot of people, I think that relationships absorb the spillover. So your family could end up carrying the stress that they actually didn't sign up for.
Yeah. And I think, and that I hate it when people say that, because people say that all the time. Well, this is what you signed up for. This is, ultimately, I don't think anyone can sign up for the traumas, the everything associated to being in law enforcement that you see, that you bear witness to be able to really hold on to that for others.
For some people too, I think that rest feels undeserved. So you might feel valuable when you're producing or you're performing, but when you're not, then it might feel like you're unworthy.
I think that's a huge something we hold on to, that we should never, because if you're always trying to produce and you're trying to overachieve and you're trying to, build this reputation of hard work all the time and you never recharge your batteries, you're going to burn yourself out.
Some ways I think that you've done a really great job. We've done a really great job at being able to manage these without you quitting your job is, number one, to name the trade-offs, right? When you went on Graveyard, for example, we had so many very difficult discussions, but they were also honest discussions. You and I also take part in a lot of like if-then conversations. So if this happens, then that. And I think those are incredibly important to be able to prevent resentment and even blind sacrifice when it's literally out there on the table.
Yeah, and it's having that communication with one another to be able to define, okay, this is a problem, this isn't a problem. If this happens, then if you're able to approach that dynamic, we do it in our jobs all the time, is, you go through these scenarios in your head and you do play those if then scenarios because you want to be prepared for it. There's no reason why you shouldn't be doing that with your spouse and your loved ones.
And the people that I see this becomes so much worse with are those people that have not done a good job at strengthening their off-duty identity. And it's really easy to swing out of that by developing hobbies or, nurturing your friendships and relationships outside of work. It could be faith, just something that creates that purpose outside of the job.
Yeah, if you don't have a purpose outside of your work, you start identifying yourself more and more as your job. And to create that purpose, to create that perception of yourself outside of your uniform is super important.
And ultimately, I think it's most important to just recognize those quiet costs early so that the service that you're taking part in is going to remain meaningful and not all-consuming. I hope you've gotten some value out of today's episode. If you have, do us a favor, drop a review, subscribe down below, and as always, know that I'm sending you a long, tight hug from my home to yours.